The year's first Grand Slam begins on Monday, but we still don't know if tennis superstar and world number one Novak Djokovic will face his compatriot Miomir Kecmanovic in the first round. And that, of course, is the top story here on WION Sports. In fact, it is the top global story right now. The Australian government has launched a fresh bid to deport Novak Djokovic from the country. Australia's Immigration Minister Alex Hawke used extraordinary powers vested in his office to cancel the Serbian's visa. Djokovic's lawyers have launched an urgent appeal to block this move as well, 4 days after a Melbourne court quashed the Border Force's decision to deport Djokovic. Meanwhile, Djokovic landed in Australia last Wednesday with a medical exemption against the need to be vaccinated against COVID-19. The Border Force detained him at Melbourne Airport and rejected his explanation and sent him into detention at an immigration hotel. His lawyers argued in court that proper procedure was not followed and the court agreed with their arguments. However, holes began to appear in Djokovic's version of events within days. The Serbian claimed that he had tested positive for COVID on December 16th, yet he was pictured attending public events in the following days. Doubts were also raised over the entry in a pre-travel declaration form. Djokovic was forced to release a statement confirming that he had breached COVID isolation protocol and that his agent had mistakenly entered incorrect data in his form. After days of deliberation and controversy, Immigration Minister Alex Hawke then cancelled the visa earlier this morning. The statement mentioned that the decision to cancel the visa has been done on the grounds of health and good order. Australia's Prime Minister Scott Morrison has defended this decision. He released a statement saying that Hawke was protecting the result of sacrifices that Australians have made during the pandemic. Djokovic will be detained by border officials on Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Melbourne time. He will then be escorted to the office of his lawyers even as they continue to battle the cancellation. Djokovic will be detained again after that meeting, and as things stand, he will remain at his residence tonight. Now, for the latest on this story that the world is watching as it unfolds, Fox Sports Australia journalist Christy Doran joins us now from Sydney. Christy, thanks so much for joining us on WION. Now, this is, of course, a developing story, but did the Australian government need to wait till Friday to cancel Djokovic's visa? How much of this is actually about him being a danger to public health, and how much of it is actually a political ping-pong?
Well, you really have to think it's more of the latter than the former. You look around Australia at the moment, right across from New South Wales up into Queensland, Victoria, even into South Australia, down into Tasmania. COVID is a present beast, unfolding, developing, moving rapidly like it has throughout the rest of the world. And it's only in the last month and a half that the Omicron variant has spread like wildfire right throughout New South Wales and Victoria. It's now spread into Queensland and South Australia and Tasmania, but that wasn't the case a couple of weeks ago. So in terms of the threat that Novak Djokovic might bring, look, you'd think that it's relatively low, even if he isn't vaccinated, because quite clearly, it's everywhere. There's tens of thousands of new positive cases each day. You have to think that this is just politics. There's a federal election that is coming up in the next few months. Scott Morrison, the Prime Minister, is under major pressure to retain office, to have a second term as Prime Minister. So this seems like it's politics for politics' sake.
Right. Now, Djokovic also has a big match coming up on Monday or Tuesday. The border force is to detain him on Saturday and then escort him to his solicitor's office. But how will these proceedings work in these kind of specific cases?
Well, we've seen already that this is quite an unprecedented measure, particularly for someone of such profile as Novak Djokovic, that it was overturned from the High Court earlier in the week, just a couple of days ago, in fact. It was dismissed, it was thrown out, and it's interesting that come 5, 6 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, when generally speaking, when big bombshells are to be dropped, they're buried late in the week. It's interesting that this came really late on a Friday. Doesn't leave much time for Novak Djokovic and his team to mount a legal case. So it's fascinating to see which direction it will go. It's really speculative to try to predict which way this is going to go. But you would really think that it has to be resolved over the next day. We know that every tennis player under the sun is being asked about it. Andy Murray, and I suppose supporting Novak Djokovic by this evening, being asked about it. It's not a great look. Every tennis player is going to be asked that for a long, long time to come. And I think it just reflects poorly on not just Tennis Australia having promised him that he'd be okay to come in. Clearly, rules were pushed, laws were pushed. But at the end of the day, I don't think there's anyone that looks good coming out of this.
Christy, just wrapping up our discussion here, since the original court decision on Monday, there have been several versions that have emerged that have not quite added up. So did Djokovic's admission of breaching COVID protocol influence his decision, in your opinion?
Possibly. It would be speculative to say, yes or no definitively, but that didn't reflect well on him, of course, no. But perhaps I think politics, the government has seen an opportunity to go, well, this is another example of a person who's tried to bend the rules, who has put other citizens at risk, and he may endanger Australian citizens. At the end of the day, a tennis player like Novak Djokovic, he's going to put all his energy into winning another Grand Slam. He's not out walking the streets and going into shopping centres. You only have to look at Roger Federer, who's said on a number of times that during tournament play, what he does most is sleep when he's not on the court. So I would have thought that Novak Djokovic would have been doing a similar sort of thing. Who he puts at risk, I don't think it's a huge amount of people, but look, it's quite possible that it's swung some of the decision. But at the end of the day, if it goes to a court, well, they shouldn't be necessarily showing any bias.
Right. Christy, thank you so much for all those insights into this controversy. And thanks for joining us on WION at this hour. WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.